Hello, I'm Hermione Dace and I'm a policy analyst in the Science and Innovation Unit at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. The Institute exists to support political leaders and governments to build open, inclusive and prosperous societies in a globalized world. And in the Science and Innovation Unit, we work across a wide span of issues, one of which is agri-food tech and the future of food. So in this session, I'm going to be discussing the role that digital technology can play in our food system, why it's key to regenerative farming, and some of the issues that governments must grapple with to harness the benefits of food technologies. And the key message that I want to get across is that we face an enormous opportunity to embrace technology to improve the way we produce and consume food. And policymakers and governments can play a key role in helping to scale food tech and encouraging the transformation to a food system that works much better for people and the planet. So I'm going to cover three broad themes in this session. Firstly, the problems we face in our food system and the need for another agricultural revolution. Secondly, the opportunity that lies in digital technology. And I'm going to highlight one key technology that could play a major role in sustainability and specifically in helping to improve our soil, and that is vertical farming. And finally, I'm going to discuss the role for policymakers and governments in leading this change and some of the policy issues that need to be addressed. If you'd like to submit any questions, then please use the Q&A functionality in the chat. So I'm going to start by briefly setting out some of the issues faced by our food system. And in many ways, our global food system is hugely impressive. As the global population has grown, so too has agricultural production. And over the last 50 years, the Green Revolution has enabled the production of cereal crops to triple, with only a relatively small increase in the area of land under cultivation. And we can attribute much of this success to farmers who have adapted and embraced new technologies. The combine harvester welcomed an era of intensive industrialized farming, and we've come a very long way since its invention in the 1830s. But today, our food system is also affected by deep inefficiencies, inequalities and externalities, and how we grow, process, transport, consume and waste food is damaging to both our health and our planet. So food systems already contribute up to 30% of total global emissions, and agricultural land use is the main driver of deforestation. Obesity is on the rise globally, yet at the same time, food insecurity and hunger is increasing. And meanwhile, our soil is degrading at such a rate that we may risk losing the world's topsoil in less than 100 years. But fortunately, whereas previous farming approaches such as mechanization and the use of sometimes harmful fertilizers have encouraged positive impacts on some aspects of our food system at the expense of others, new and emerging food and agriculture technologies can potentially create valuable co-benefits. So, despite the challenges, I'm optimistic about our ability to transform our food system, and I'm optimistic about our ability to do it in a way that is not just positive for the environment and our health, but also for farmers, food producers and consumers. And there's sometimes a tension between a focus on nature and a focus on digital technology. But as I'll set out, actually, the two can work in tandem. So there are a huge range of technologies we can take advantage of, and some of the key ones are set out in the slide that you can see. And although typically food systems have been evaluated based on yield, that focus purely on productivity has come at the expense of the natural environment and human health. But technologies, most of which are enabled by the application of software and data, come together to deliver innovations that can have a positive impact on yield and the economy, but also the environment and human health. So for example, there are new innovations that enable us to increase the quality of foods and farming. So precision farming technologies mean we can reduce reliance on agrochemicals, improve soil quality and make foods more nutritious. And this means we can still get more from our food system with fewer inputs, but with less strain on the world's natural resources. Drone technology and satellites allow farmers to evaluate crop conditions and reduce reliance on harmful fertilizers. And breakthroughs in science and new seed and soil technologies can help to regenerate the soil, capture more carbon, and improve the nutritional value of foods. We also have completely novel methods of producing food, which take production away from farms and towards more controlled environments and labs. So innovations such as vertical farming and alternative proteins offer radical alternatives to traditional production methods and hold significant opportunities for the environment, nutrition, and health. The former Google CEO, Eric Schmidt, has gone as far to say that plant-based meat is the #1 tech trend that will significantly improve the world. So I'm now just going to go into a bit more detail on one technology that could have a significant impact, and that is vertical farming. So vertical farming involves growing crops in vertically stacked layers in an indoor environment under carefully controlled conditions. Vertical farms require a range of technologies to function, such as LED lights, rotating beds, ventilation systems, and cameras and sensors. And it has multiple advantages. So it means more can be produced in less space, and it offers a means of guaranteeing yield irrespective of the weather. It also significantly reduces the inputs required, so things like fertilizers, pesticides, and water. And it doesn't disturb animals and trees, so it can be better for biodiversity. Some vertical farming companies also claim that food can be produced with better nutritional value. Vertical farming also makes it possible to grow food within a short distance of where it is to be consumed. So reducing the distance needed to get the food from farm to plate and reducing its carbon footprint, and also increasing the security of the supply chain. However, in its current form, vertical farming also has some weaknesses. So it requires large amounts of energy. So although it uses less water and fewer nutrients than traditional farming, it's very energy intensive, largely due to the use of supplementary lights like LEDs and climate control. And if this energy doesn't come from renewable sources, vertical farming could have a negative environmental impact. Secondly, the unit economics remains uncertain. So some people have questioned the commercial viability of vertical farming on a large scale. The startup costs are incredibly high compared to traditional farming, and the current cost of providing lighting, heating, water, and labor could outweigh the benefits from the output. So as a result, vertical farms to date have been most effective at growing leafy vegetables and high-value herbs, and slower growing vegetables are not yet profitable in a vertical farming system. However, it's likely that innovations in the infrastructure, so like automation, lighting, and temperature controls, could bring down the power and space costs, or it's possible to upgrade the software or the biology of the crops themselves with tools like gene editing, so they are more successful in vertical farming environments. So despite its challenges, vertical farming clearly holds strong possibilities to reduce land use for food production, regenerate the soil, and possibly rewild some areas of land. And it's quite likely that in the future, vertical farming will complement other traditional methods of farming. So the third theme I want to cover is how do we get there? And as I've set out, food and agricultural technologies present a major opportunity to improve the way we produce our food, but to scale them up, and so they work for both people and the planet, is a significant challenge, and it's clear that governments have a major role to play. In the UK, this means a change of narrative. So agriculture is typically neglected in conversations about climate change and net zero. So when we talk about the green revolution, agriculture is also neglected. Last year, Boris Johnson set out a 10-point plan for a green revolution that encompassed issues across energy and electric transport and many other important issues that are vital for tackling the climate crisis. But food and agri-tech wasn't mentioned, and we need to bring its focus much higher on the agenda. So there are obviously many policy issues that deserve attention from policymakers and governments, but I just want to set out 4 here that are relevant. So the first of these is data. And modern farms can collect a potentially huge amount of data. So for example, sensors can measure many variables such as moisture levels in the soil, and weather data can be obtained from weather stations. And used effectively, data can offer valuable insights and help farmers make important decisions, such as when to spray fertilizer. But the challenge is putting this data to good use by interpreting it properly and using it to create useful insights for farmers. So to be most useful, data from multiple sources, including public data, machine and sensor data, and other privately held data needs to be integrated. Yet too often, smart farming systems and machinery lack interoperability. So policymakers have a role to play in terms of setting and supporting appropriate data infrastructure and standards. The second key area is skills. So the average age of a UK farmer is 58, and we need to find new ways to attract young people to farming, and increased use of technology could be a way to do that. However, the skill set for the modern farm is likely to be significantly different from today's. So for example, vertical farming may create new career opportunities for technologists, and may provide new jobs in areas like engineering, biochemistry, and biotechnology. So we really need to invest in the future-facing skills and make farming an attractive career for young people. The third area is investment. So there's a real opportunity for the UK to lead on some of these technologies, but we must create the digital infrastructure to support farmers and provide farmers with the capital to adopt digital technology. It's not up to farmers or innovators alone, they need to be supported. So for example, the venture capital model is unlikely to be sufficient to fund vertical farming on a large scale. To scale up vertical farms so they can produce significantly increased output, the capital expenditure will be enormous, and governments are likely to need to play a role in supporting the infrastructure required to make vertical farming feasible at scale. And the final area is consumer engagement and acceptance. So for food technologies to be deployed, there'll need to be adequate demand from consumers, producers, and farmers. There is evidence that consumers are becoming more aware of the social and economic impact of their shopping basket. So since the start of the pandemic, the number of consumers who take the environment into consideration when making purchases has increased. But some consumers are still critical or skeptical of new technologies in food. So for example, perceptions around plant-based and cultured meat are varied, even though these alternative proteins are gaining increasing acceptance. So we really need to engage consumers in the debate around food production. And there may be interventions we can make, like increasing education and dialogue around these technologies, and therefore building trust and acceptance. So I'm going to end with two key messages. The first is a call to action to governments. Just like so many other parts of our economy, the digitization of agriculture is essential. And countries really should embrace food technologies and seize not only the environmental, but also the economic and health rewards. And the second key message is just to highlight the need for coordinated policy. So our food system cuts across so many different issues like health, nutrition, climate change, biodiversity, jobs and trade. And we must avoid policy formulation that takes place in silos. And I think it's fantastic that Springfield Agri are bringing together so many different stakeholders to address this really important issue. So with that, I will wrap up. And if you want to learn more about our work at the Tony Blair Institute, you can visit our website, institute.global. And it's worth noting that we released a report last year named Technology to Feed the World, where you can read about these issues in more detail. Thank you.